Welcome to another episode of Positive Solutions for Life. This is Peggy Meyer. Today's guest is Massimo Backus. Massimo built his successful executive coaching practice based on the radical idea that self-compassion is a leadership epiphany. It is radical because it is in direct opposition to traditional leadership orthodoxy that you have to become less of a human to be a better leader. Now, through his coaching practice, speaking, and his book, Human First, Leader Second, Massimo is taking his message of self-compassion to CEOs, founders, and senior executives everywhere. So welcome to the podcast, Massimo.
Peggy, it's so nice to be here.
Oh, I am so excited for our conversation. Self-compassion and leadership. I'm so intrigued about those, putting those two together. So, but first, can you start the conversation by sharing just a little bit more about you, your personal journey, and how it has led to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and you know, I kind of think of those formative years. There's always kind of like something that was pivotal or most influential
Mhm.
for you that shaped the foundation of who we are when we kind of form into adults, or at least try to pretend to be adults, which I find that most days that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And for me, a big influential factor was growing up with dyslexia, and at a time in the 80s and 90s when there was support for it, but it was an experience that felt very freeing to me.
Mhm.
I'd be taken out of the normal classroom to go into the special needs classroom, and
Yeah.
those sorts of um, gestures within any sort of system that you're in make you feel like you're different. And I just yesterday there was a sixth grade orientation for my son who's going into sixth grade, and they were going over the syllabus and the agenda and all the different tools and technology the kids are going to use, and uh, it was overwhelming for me. I mean, it put me back in the place of going like, yes, this was really, really, really challenging
Hmm.
kid, and the feeling of always being behind and never really knowing what's going on. And so you uh, create different mechanisms to make sense of the world around you.
Yeah.
And the gifts for me that came from that were, resilience was probably the biggest thing. Is that I
Hmm.
just never gave up. You keep trying. But it shaped much of the way that I saw the world, and that was happening in concert with that I think that is just my nature, which is I must have purpose in my life.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people listening probably can relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
I was jealous of people that could have just a job and get a paycheck and find their enjoyment and fulfillment in a hobby or an activity or in their family or something like that.
Hmm.
But for me, it was they are one and the same. My occupation, my profession, my career must also be my purpose.
Hmm.
And you put that in context of being challenged within school, and I tried on a lot of different roles. I tried a lot of different jobs and a lot of different paths, and thankfully, when I found the world of leadership development and executive coaching, I was like, this suit fits. This is the right place for me to be, and it matches with purpose and my natural skills, and then obviously the skills that we develop over time.
Hmm.
Um, my introduction to this epiphany around self compassion didn't come from my intellectual curiosity or because I was doing some brilliant research. It came from because I'm a human and I'm flawed just like everybody else. And I got feedback from my team at a point in my career where I was flying high, and I was all signs were telling me that I was great and that I was doing an amazing job. And then I got feedback from my team that suggested a very, very different story, that I was not creating psychological safety, that I wasn't establishing trust in relationships, that I was defensive to the point that people didn't feel like they could speak their minds or be honest with me.
Hmm.
And I was devastated by that because it was different than what I was hearing elsewhere. And it was certainly not aligned with my intention of how I wanted to lead.
Yeah.
And that took me down an avenue of um, humility and surrender to the point that I acknowledged I don't have the answers. The answer is out there, but it is not.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not going to be able to think my way out of this. I really need to let go of my kind of judgment or my need to be right. And
Hmm.
on that path, I got introduced to self compassion, and it was an epiphany for me, Peggy, that
Yeah.
changed my life in every conceivable way you could imagine. Um, and that's when I got really curious about it and started doing
Hmm.
the research and uncovered, what this really is all about. But I wish that I could say, oh, I saw the trends in the universe or something, and I knew this was the hot topic. I stumbled into it, and that's why my book is called First Leader Second, because where we get ourselves stuck is in this concept of being leaders. Leaders are perfect. Leaders have all the right answers. Leaders are always in control. They're always poised.
Mhm.
Yeah, not really. I mean, that's the goal, but the one commonality that all leaders have is that we're human.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's the one thing. And if we lose sight of that, then we lose the one thing that is the true, authentic connective tissue of all of us. And that's what leadership is all about, is around that connection to move each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Because leaders are really those influential people, and we are all leaders. We all influence somebody, whether it's just yourself or family, your kids, we influence somebody, and that's how I view leadership, is being influential to others, and kind of moving them in the direction you want them to move, especially like kiddos that are just going back to school, right? Like encouraging them, yes, this is going to be good, even if you're overwhelmed already with all the information that gets thrown at you on the first day, right? And so can you start, like, I always like to make sure that we're on the same page as far as what we're talking about. So how would you define self-compassion? When you're talking about it, what does it mean to you, so that we're all on the same page?
I mean, in the simplest terms, Peggy, self-compassion is about treating ourselves with the same kindness that we would another person. When we offer compassion to another person, we empathize with what it is they're experiencing. And if they're suffering, we, through compassion, attempt to help alleviate that suffering.
Mhm,
Self-compassion is offering that same kindness to ourselves.
mhm,
And there's three main pieces to it. Self-awareness, which is essentially just, what am I feeling?
mhm.
And are you familiar with the movie Inside Out?
Yes, I love that movie.
Right? I love that movie. And so in that movie, there's the five main core characters: sadness, happiness, disgust. I guess it's joy, not happiness. Um, and these main characters represent the main emotions that most of us have access to naming.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, that means that our emotional vocabulary is 5 words.
Mhm.
So it's pretty limited.
Yeah.
The reality is there's this depth of color and detail around all different types of emotions that we feel.
Mhm.
And it's important for us to be aware of those, because anger might not be anger. It might be disgust. It might be a sense of feeling rejected,
Mhm.
or loneliness,
Mhm.
or discouraged. So we want to get clear on, like, what is it that we're actually experiencing, and realizing that we're not defined by our emotions or our feelings. They're just data points.
Yeah.
It's just information.
Yeah.
And it is an information that is incredibly insightful as to speaking to what it is that we need, how we can
Mhm.
offer ourselves compassion. So the first piece is around awareness. The second is around common humanity, which is a connection to other people, and realizing whatever it is that I'm feeling, I'm not alone in that feeling.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when we are laid off, let go from a job, going through a divorce, dealing with aging parents, struggling financially, you name the problem, it is very common to isolate.
Mhm.
Am I the only one in my friend group this is happening to? Why is this? Why me? Why is this only happening to me? Common humanity, we realize we have all had the same emotions.
Mhm.
Maybe not the same experience, not the same lived experience, but we just met. But I know that you have experienced sadness in your life. And I only know that because you're a human, and that's part of the human experience.
Mhm.
So there's always someone that we can connect to. And it's not a comparison of, well, is that person's sadness the same as mine, or who's been more sad, or who's suffered more?
Right.
It's that we all suffer. It is part of our
Mhm.
experience. Not isolate that is an opportunity to offer ourselves compassion, because we realize I'm not alone.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then the third piece is around acts of self kindness. And I look at this taking um, two different directions. And if you think about, um, in a storm, you could go to the leeward side of the island, which is the side away from the storm. It's essentially downwind, and we're protected. And those are the acts of self kindness that are, um, making sure that you're drinking water, getting enough rest,
Mhm.
taking a walk, calling a good friend, reading a book, like things that are going to take care of you, that are actually nurturing for us.
Mhm.
And then there's these courageous, these windward, it's on the stormy side of the island, that are maybe a little bit more difficult to do, but they are also acts of setting boundaries, saying
Mhm.
no to something that you
Mhm.
maybe want to do, but you know that you shouldn't do, having a difficult conversation with someone. These are difficult things to do, but they are in themselves, they're
Mhm.
acts of self kindness.
Yeah.
And when you put those things into concert, that is self compassion. And it's not something that we ever get to be done doing. What it
Yeah.
comes down to is it's about a relationship to ourselves. And I love
Mhm.
what you said earlier about, we think about leadership oftentimes in the context of influencing others, but how are we leading ourselves?
Mhm.
That's fundamentally what this is about.
Yeah.
And in order to lead ourselves, we have to have an active relationship with ourselves, and accept the reality that that relationship is going to be. going for the rest of our lives. And
Hmm.
hopefully it's a long relationship, right?
Right, right.
And
I want to
any
be
kind of
here a long
relationship,
time, right?
hopefully, any
We don't
relationship
know. Yeah,
takes a lot of work. You know, when you
yeah.
meet somebody, we're celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary. Um, you know, what a wonderful thing to celebrate. And also an acknowledgement of these people have worked really hard for something.
Hmm.
No relationship is easy. And
Right.
the relationship with ourselves is no different. But the epiphany that people have when practicing self-compassion is that they get to choose to have a loving relationship with themselves.
Yeah, yeah,
That there's a consciousness to it to go like, I get to choose the relationship that I have with myself. It's
yeah.
not just um, something that's passive that's just happening. But if you start to be proactive in doing it, you make different choices. You become
Hmm.
aware of what are the types of things that I tend to say to myself.
Hmm.
I find most people, if they spoke to their friends or loved ones the way they speak to themselves, they would not have very many friends after that,
No,
right?
no, they wouldn't.
And yet we
I
go,
say
but
that all the time as well. I mean,
do
it's
you?
like if you talk to yourself like you talk to, if you talk to others how you talk to yourself, you wouldn't have any friends, you know. And it's so true. We're so critical of ourselves. But I'm loving this idea and this the concepts of self-compassion, the self-awareness, the commonalities and really just really taking care of ourselves. But we often don't do that. So is that like, I mean, I'm thinking, man, I'm in a storm a lot, like I'm like self-critical, those kind of things. And it's like, how do you make that shift? How did you end up making that shift? I mean, it was kind of that epiphany with, kind of a slap in the face from what your team was telling you versus what you were feeling. But sometimes we need that reflection from others to kind of get us into that. Can you like expand on that?
Most often, self-criticism or the belief that I need to be hard to myself because that's what gives me my competitive edge, or that's what
Mhm,
makes me good, or I work hard because I'm so hard on myself, can sound like things like I just care a lot, or I'm a perfectionist,
mhm.
or I just want to win. And all of those are kind of throwaway comments because we don't interrogate them and go like, well, what does it actually mean?
Right.
And what are the myths or beliefs that I have just kind of developed and assumed for so long that I haven't questioned them?
Hmm.
And for me, it was a myth that growing up dyslexic, that my well-intentioned, misinformed protector, my wimp is what I call them, was that I need to defend myself at all times. I need to make sure that I have the last word and that I show everybody how smart and capable I am in all places.
Hmm.
This was an unconscious thing that I developed. And it was created when I was probably like, call it 10, 11, 12 years old,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you got to put it in context to go, I loved myself back then. I think
Mhm.
kids that are 10 or 11 are great kids, but let's be honest, their brains are not fully formed.
Right.
So maybe some of the approaches to managing their life are not the ideal.
Hmm.
They need
Hmm.
to be, revisited after a little while, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that was just a part of the way that I viewed the world. I didn't even realize that I was doing it. I didn't
Hmm.
realize that I was so self-critical, um, and that other people were noticing it. So when I got this feedback that I was defensive and that people experienced me that way, I responded by saying, I'm not being defensive. You're being defensive for telling me that I'm defensive. Now, that is like textbook defensiveness.
Right. Right.
That's how clueless I was. And that's how clueless most people are around these things
Hmm.
because we're so in love with our intention, which is I want to be a great leader. I want to be seen as a supportive person. I want all these good
Hmm.
things that they neglect to see, well, what is the impact of my actions?
Hmm.
And they're oftentimes misaligned. And so
Yeah.
you end up running into some version of rock bottom, which is when you try and align your intention and impact and you get stuck and you can't do that, what's getting in the way is this limiting belief that I need to continue to be self critical in order to succeed.
Hmm.
And you
Hmm.
have to be able to recognize, well, what is that self critical voice saying? What are the beliefs behind that?
Right.
And what behavior is it perpetuating? And for me, I was defensive, not because other people were attacking me, but because I was attacking myself.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because in
Yeah.
every room, I was like, you don't screw this up. Don't let them know that you're not as smart as them. Again, old form pattern stories, right?
Right. Right.
And I thought that I was keeping it a secret, that no one knew that I had these insecurities or imposter syndrome. And the reality is, everybody could see it.
Yeah.
So thank goodness for the feedback. It was
Right.
absolutely brutal to hear. It's so hard when people
Yeah.
um, finally get witness to what other people are seeing and experiencing them as, but it's a necessary um, data point for us to wake up.
Yeah.
And I tried for 6 months after getting that feedback, Peggy, thinking I work with executives, I work with leaders, I help them go through these transformations. I'll just apply the same things to myself. It'll be easy. And I'll just, take me a couple months and I'll turn this around. A few months in, I realized I wasn't making any progress. And that's when I got to that point of surrender.
Hmm.
And that's when I needed to let this self compassion in, because what I was trying to fix was just superficial,
Yeah.
as opposed to getting to the core of why am I so hard on myself?
Hmm. Hmm.
And what aspects of myself do I need to accept and forgive?
Yeah.
And that is that's the hard work.
That is the hard.
This does not come for free.
No.
But on the other side of it is what I believe the single most important relationship in our lives is a relationship to ourselves.
Hmm.
And when I had my epiphany around self compassion, I had a true moment of elation. And in that moment, it was the first time I experienced what it meant to love myself.
Hmm.
Not the feeling of praise when you're getting appreciation or winning an award. And I'm like, oh, I love this feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, love myself in that I love my strengths and my weaknesses. And
Hmm.
I love that I get to live this life, not in social comparison, not because I've got this and other people don't, but just because this is me.
Yeah.
I get to live this life. And that's available to everyone, but it takes constant practice. And there are days, weeks that go by where I'm not actively practicing self compassion.
Yeah.
And I got to come back to it and come back to it and come back to it. But I've been married for 16 years, and there are times in our marriage where I go like, wait, we got to come back to each other.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's no different. Um, but allowing ourselves the space to go, yeah, we are going to get it wrong. We're,
Yeah.
um, I don't think we need to celebrate our shortcomings, but I do think we need to embrace them.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't need to highlight them, but we do need to accept them as part of ourselves. I mean, I really, really love going back and just going, oh, we have to be aware because the stories we tell ourselves about things that, you know, we latched onto as beliefs, as truths when we were 10, 13, we have long forgotten the reason why we developed that in the first place if we don't take a step back and going, oh, the hard work of being truly, truly honest with ourselves. These unconscious things that happen, our brain just goes, click, oh, okay, I have this issue with me, or I see this as, less than others. So I have to create this, armor or this persona around it. We have to put on this, tough jacket
Yes,
and
yes,
just
call it.
plow through it. And it's
Yes,
like, that's going to cause problems later.
it always does. It always comes up to get us,
Yeah.
um, because it's like having a second full time job, to constantly be putting on some sort of, I call it our leadership costume. Like
Mhm.
what is this way that I want people to see us? And the harsh reality is it never works. Anybody, we fool ourselves in doing it and thinking that it works, and it works earlier in our careers, maybe at a time where everyone else is trying to figure it out, but at some point, it's not effective anymore, and people just see it as defensiveness or controlling or perfectionistic or intimidating or being a hard ass.
Yeah.
However it manifests, it's different for each of us,
Right.
but they see it. And for people that are in positions of authority, often in leadership roles, they're not surrounded by people that will say what they see,
Yes.
and that's a disservice.
Hmm.
And I'm in a very privileged position in the work that I do to be a messenger of things that other people see but can't say because they're in a structure, and
Hmm.
there's authority there.
Hmm.
Um, and it happens all the time. But this is no one is immune to this, Peggy. We're all um, not even victims of it. It's just kind of part of the way that we develop as adults.
Yeah.
But it's so liberating when you
Yeah.
realize, oh my gosh, I can let this go. And when
Yeah.
we think about the definition of leadership, the people that are best at leading themselves, the people that we meet in our lives and go, there's just something magnetic about them.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
seem so self assured. They seem so comfortable in their skin. They're just leading themselves.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. If I'm a leader, then I need to be this, impenetrable figure that you know, people see as perfect.
Right.
And I don't think that that is the truth.
Right.
But I'm also not suggesting that we go and share our deepest, darkest
Right.
secrets with everyone. But to be able to understand what those are
Hmm.
is really important.
Hmm.
And in the last 15 years, I think the concept of vulnerability has become more and more popular and part of the
Hmm.
kind of the zeitgeist of our conversations.
Hmm.
The reality is, because we're humans, we are vulnerable.
Yeah.
So the notion that we need to be more vulnerable is a misnomer because we already are. Like,
Hmm.
we are mortal. Like
Yeah.
this is a temporary event that we get to experience, this thing called life.
Right.
We are vulnerable. All of the leadership costume is us trying to not be.
Right.
So we need to let that go and embrace the vulnerability, and then the little things in life become so much more precious.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
sending my son to sixth grade this morning, it's like, wow, this is a really precious moment. This is going to happen once. I have one kid.
Yeah.
Let's be fully present for this
Yeah.
because it's happening now,
Right.
not tomorrow, right
Right.
now.
Right now. What's in the present? But I'm going back because what I'm getting from you is that, often we put on our leadership code or whatever we want to, put on, but so many people can see right through it. It is with the way we can show up authentically and genuinely ourselves is what people really want. They don't want this persona person in this flashy jacket or whatever. They want the real us, and we have to know who that person is by really understanding ourselves and showing up and going, I don't know everything. Like, tell me how I can have a better conversation with you. Tell me how my actions reflect to you and how you're receiving them, because that may not be my intention. We all have good intentions, we do, but they may come across differently to different people, not only based on our stories, but based on their stories as well. So, you know, modeling that self-compassion and just being showing up as ourselves, I think is super, super important in a leadership role. And so I think you're highlighting that, so, so well. But when people embrace, the self-compassion, how do they show up differently? I know you've kind of alluded to it, but like, how would they show up to others differently?
So the research on self-compassion over the last 20 years is nothing short of fascinating, because if you think of any psychological construct, self-compassion is like the God particle. It seems to be the greatest supercharging psychological construct of all of them. When it comes down to resilience, when people practice self-compassion, they're more resilient
Mhm,
because they're able to acknowledge the setbacks as opposed to squash them or minimize them, and
mhm,
they learn from them.
mhm,
When it comes to personal accountability, there was a study done with couples that were going through a divorce, and the couples that practice self-compassion, each party was more likely to acknowledge their contribution to the failure of the marriage.
mhm.
Accountability is a very important thing in leadership to be
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
recognize that. When it comes to learning agility and the persistence of learning, there's been studies with students, a control group who didn't practice self-compassion, and those that did. The students that studied harder was the ones that actually practiced self-compassion. Um, when it comes to connection and community and collaboration, self-compassion, again, as you were speaking to,
Mhm.
Peggy, around acknowledging, can we have conversations around intention and impact instead of just saying, well, my intention was this. Everybody's got good intentions,
Yeah.
but it's meaningless if we're not actually aligned.
Mhm,
So when people are practicing it, they are showing up authentically because they are actively managing this relationship with themselves, and they're doing it in a way that is serving them and the greater good. Because we can over index on being empathetic or over index on being collaborative to the detriment of our own needs,
mhm,
right? The person that wants to be so supportive that they never say what they want,
mhm.
the person that never has an opinion of where they want to eat
Yeah.
dinner. It's like, but you do have an opinion, and that matters.
Right.
Um, so there's a sense of self authorship that comes from this practice as well.
Mhm,
And the beauty of it is it doesn't take anyone else. It is a practice that we can do on our own, and it just needs to be something that is done with regularity.
mhm.
So those are some examples of how people show up differently in practicing it. Um, but the biggest thing is we're not wearing this leadership costume anymore,
Yeah.
because we're able to offer ourselves the sense of safety and security that we need
Mhm.
so that we can trust ourselves to be authentic.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest challenge, is that people don't trust themselves to
Mm.
be authentic. There's been a
Yeah.
lived experience that has said, don't be that way. You're too much, you're too little, you're too loud, you're too quiet, whatever it is.
Right.
And so we try and conform to what it is that we think society or our community says that we need to be.
Mhm.
And we're fearful of, well, if I let that go, then what happens if I'm too much or too little again?
Yeah. I say freedom. Like
Yeah,
I say
exactly.
totally freedom. And, but if we're authentically ourselves, we are totally free. We don't have all this baggage of comparison and wondering and am I too much? Am I too little? And all of that. I mean, that all goes away. And guess what? You have more energy to be you.
And you get to change.
Yes.
Our life is long, hopefully, right?
Yes.
Evolution of who we are is part of the excitement of it. As a for most of my life, I would have described myself as an extreme extrovert. Every psychological assessment I've ever taken has, supported that, right? Just this past weekend, I got back from a work trip. We were invited to go be with some friends. 10 times out of 10 previously, I would have said, yes, I'm there. Even if I was tired, it's just, that's what I do. We're
Mhm.
going to be social. Let's be social. And I said, I'm not really feeling up for it. So
Yeah.
I stayed back and my family went. I don't think I would have allowed myself to do that because my self image would have been like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
you have to do this. You're obliged. You are an extrovert. This is what you do, as opposed to allowing the space to be like, well, but maybe I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe I never was. Maybe I just didn't give myself the space to go like, well, what do I really want right now?
Mhm.
And I'd
Mhm.
rather stay home and read a book, uh, and
Yeah.
I'll miss out. But that right there takes the self-compassion because of course I felt like, well, I should, and what would they
Mhm.
think if I'm not there, and what am I
Right.
going to miss out on, the FOMO factor.
Yeah.
All of that was in play,
Yeah.
but it's like, what do I really want right now?
Yeah.
And is this harming anybody by me not going? No. Okay, well, this feels right. This
Yeah.
feels authentic.
Yes, yes. And so, but you don't come across that until you become more self-aware, until you accept that you are you and really realize what it is that you really want and how you can show up. And hey, the world's not going to stop if you don't show up for one event.
No, it's not. None of us are as important as we think in our mind's eye.
I know.
Peggy, I believe that all people want to be seen, heard, and loved.
Oh yeah.
That is a shared thing that we all have as humans. And we all go about getting it differently
Hmm. Yeah.
based on our upbringing and our family dynamics and all sorts of
Hmm.
things. That's where self-awareness really starts, is understanding, how do I want to be seen, heard, and loved?
Yeah.
How do I go about getting that? Where did that come from?
Hmm.
Is that still effective in the way that I maybe it once was?
Hmm.
And then what can I change about that?
Hmm.
But that's what we're all going for. We're
Yeah.
all looking for that external validation. And a big difference between self compassion and self esteem or getting external validation is that it's internally resourced. It feels great to be told that you did a good job or that you're a
Hmm.
great mom or dad or a great employee. All of that's wonderful. But when we're reliant on it, when our sense of self worth is reliant on the
Hmm.
external world doing that, then we really easily get caught up in this game, putting
Yep.
on the costume
Yep.
and doing the dance to do all the
Yep.
things to get more and more of that.
Yeah.
And because it feels finite and it's out of our control. So there's a bit of a scarcity mindset of like, if I'm not perfect, I'm not doing enough, then I might not get that extra hit that I need of,
Yeah.
validation. With self-compassion, we're internally resourced. So
Hmm.
we'll still get those external validation and they feel great.
Yeah.
And I tell people the indication where you've shifted from the need for external validation to the appreciation of it
Hmm.
is if you're the type of person that when someone offers you a compliment and you immediately respond by complimenting them, or you minimize the compliment, or you do anything you want, like it's some gross spider that's on you, and you're like, just get it off of me. I don't
Yeah.
like this feeling of being, seen in this way. Then you're relying on this externally contingent factor. But when you practice self compassion, then you can receive that compliment in an authentic way
Mhm.
and recognize, at a minimum, it
Yeah.
means something to the person who's saying it to you. And that's why
Right.
they're saying it. And
Yeah.
so give them the respect of saying thank you to it.
Hmm.
And better yet, like actually accept it, let it
Yeah.
sink in
Yeah.
because it's nice to hear. But we often, we want to run away from that feeling, even though it's what we want,
Yeah.
which is
I
this
mean,
very odd kind of
it is.
paradox.
It is. And what I also find odd is when you're saying that, sometimes we chase these validations, external validations, but when we get them, we often brush them off because we don't think they're authentic. Yeah. But when we stop and we just really accept it for ourselves and just embrace it, then it becomes that feeling of genuine authenticity, that somebody else brings. So it's kind of like this two-edged sword that, depending on which side we're facing is, what comes at us and how we interpret it. But this is, I mean, yeah, I mean, we all need this so much, so much. How can people find out more about you, like about your book? Like, just tell the listeners.
So the book is titled Human First, Leader Second: How Self-Compassion Outperforms Self-Criticism. And it's available all over the web space.
Yeah.
Um, and it's written as I really like to cook. And so I wrote this as if me and the reader are in the kitchen and we're working on different recipes and we get to taste as we go,
Mhm.
meaning that I'm not prescribing, here is the one size fits all self-compassion playbook.
Yeah.
I'm saying here are dozens and dozens of ways to practice it and try
Mhm.
it and see what works for you and go with what tastes good. And
Yeah.
if something doesn't fit, then maybe come back to it later, maybe don't.
Mhm.
Um, but given that this isn't, we're not going to get certified in self-compassion. Like, well, I check that box. It's not one of those things. It's
Yeah.
an ongoing relationship. So the book is a resource to say, well, how do we continue to come back to this at
Mhm.
times, especially when we need it most?
Yeah.
And people can find me on LinkedIn. MassimoBackus.com is my website. And for people that are interested and curious about this, please reach out to me. I think I consider myself very lucky to have had my own leadership epiphany and blessed to be able to call this work my career. You know, if
Mhm.
at the end of my life, to look back and say, like, I spent my career helping teach people about self compassion, that feels really good.
Yeah.
That's something I'm proud of.
Yeah.
And I realize that it is a movement and it takes many people because I think everyone on earth needs to be able to understand what self compassion is and develop their own practice because there
Mhm.
is nothing more important than our relationship to ourselves because it directly impacts the way that we treat other people.
Right.
Um, it's a kind of a trite phrase, but hurt people, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And the reality is, we're all hurt
Yeah.
because life's tough,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But we also need to have the skills to nurture ourselves in that way and be kind to ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's just not something that is broadly taught
Yeah.
um, yet.
Right. Right. Yet. Yet is the key word there because we're coming into that. We're becoming more and more important to acknowledgement that how we treat ourselves impacts everything that we do. And I'm so glad that I'm so intrigued now with the book because I'm like, oh, yay, a self-development book that is like more like an interactive, I like to cook too, so I'll be like right there in the kitchen with you. But it also says it's not a one size fits all. Like we all have different tastes. And so
Yeah.
there's so many different ways that we can show ourselves self-compassion. And this week, this might work for me. But then I can say, oh, I can reread that book in another year and like, oh, this isn't working anymore. I need to go a little bit deeper. I need a little bit more spicy stuff in it. And then I need a little bit more so I can extract something else to spice up my
Exactly.
life a little bit.
Exactly, Peggy. Yes.
So,
Keep coming back to it. And it's um it's something that can be done in community too. I mean,
mhm,
this is
yeah.
a conversation to have with the people that are closest to us. Like, what
Mhm,
am I learning about my relationship to myself?
yeah.
And what about what I'm learning is indicating how I might be showing up in this relationship.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
know, the I'm a reformed defensive person, right? But I wasn't just defensive at work. I was very defensive, at home.
yeah.
My wife would get frustrated with the way I loaded the dishwasher. Understandably so. I still don't know how to do it the right way, but I would get defensive about that, which is absurd.
Yeah.
And it wasn't healthy. And now we can at least laugh about the fact that, like, this is, a old dog, new tricks. I'm having a hard time with the dishwasher,
Yeah.
and I know people listening can relate to that because I have
Oh
a
yeah.
neighbor who lives with someone who's on one side or the other of that fence.
We all have something that we're just like, I think I do it better, like,
Exactly. Oh yeah.
and you leave it up to somebody else, and it's just like, oh, it just, just gets under your skin because it's like, that's not how I would do it. That's not the right way. And we
Yes.
all, we can all get that way, but we have to, coming back with, okay, a little bit self-compassion. I have to kind of remember that when I give those chores over to the kids, is it better that it's done? Or is it better that it's done my way? You know, and sometimes
Yes.
that's not the battle that I really want to. There's bigger things out there than I should, pay attention to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, with my wife, I say, you're always going to win on this one. Like, you're right. You do load it better, and I'll keep working on it. But what's most important is we can laugh about the fact
Yeah.
that it's not something. Thank God our marriage, success doesn't rely on the dishwasher.
And we all have those things, and we'll have to think about which one it is for us. And it's just like, okay, I think it's time to let that one go. So,
Yes. Yeah.
as we wrap up today, I just loved our conversation, and I know the listeners are going to get so much value, just understanding how self-compassion can impact our entire lives. So as we wrap up, is there anything that you maybe have left unsaid that you want the listeners to hear, or any thought or quote to leave them with?
I think the thought that I want to leave people with is around judgment and being judgmental.
Mhm.
And we live in a polarized time. We live in a time where there's echo chambers and everyone's feed is giving them a different, kind of news story and all sorts of things. And so it's easy to judge those that are different or people that see things different than us. No matter what your views are, it's easy to look at others that are different and judge. And um, within self compassion, there isn't any room for judgment. And you can't be curious and judgmental at the same time. And within self compassion is actually a curiosity of like, what is going on here? What am I
Mhm.
doing or not doing to meet my needs to be seen, heard, and loved? And so I would offer people the curiosity around why am I being judgmental? When am I being judgmental? And
Mhm.
what can I do to let go of that judgment? And what is created in the space that's left over when I'm not judging?
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. We need to be more curious and more self-aware so we can show up as our authentic self with compassion with others and to others. So, and
Well
ourselves.
said.
So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure. And I'm hopeful that all the listeners out there will go research you and research your book and maybe have some book studies. Who knows?
Love it. Peggy, thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you're doing with this podcast.
You're welcome.
It brings people together and we can do this crazy life thing a little less alone.
Yes, and we can get so many good experts and, well, not, experts, yes, but also just insights from different views. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.